Just in case you missed it, it's the top 5 sports talkers of the day. Now, it's time for Dan Barreiro's Top 5 at 5. Brought to you by Gutter Helmet of Minnesota. Never clean your gutters again. Learn more at gutterhelmetmn.com.
It is Top 5 at 5 time, shall we say. Bradshaw and Brian KFAN text line. We might get back to it a little bit later. Part 2 with Andy Luger at 5:30. Are we going the distance today? Is this a 6:30 show?
Yes, going the whole way.
Outstanding. All right, Top 5. What do you got?
We do have breaking news that we did find out a way to get Larry Mondell guy unblocked.
No, that is worth breaking news. Hold on. And it took you a while because there's a lot of block numbers, but you found it.
I had to scroll through hundreds of numbers.
Larry Mondell guy, you're welcome.
Yes.
Blakemore got it done. But, so now I'm going to get inundated with, although I think right now Mondello guy probably, it's hard to do many comedic stylings right now, right? He might want to wait a day or two. Although, there are people who say you still need to be able to breathe and even be able to laugh, even though if there's nothing local to laugh about. But go ahead.
Here we go.
Time now for the obligatory Kevin Fallness Minnesota Wild mention.
Yeah, they lose to the defending champs, the Panthers, in overtime on Saturday. I said, to me, this feels like a game where if you want to be positive, you can. If you want to be a negative Nancy, you can.
Okay.
There's certain things that I think this team is still trending in the right direction. Getting Boldy and Eck back is a breath of fresh air. I think they shot themselves in the foot down the stretch and took stupid penalties that bit them in the you-know-what. And they had the puck in overtime for like 3 minutes and didn't get, I don't think they got a single shot off, maybe one.
That's not good.
And the Panthers go down the other way and score.
That's not helpful.
You get the point. You compete against the defending champs. So I think going into, they get the Blackhawks tomorrow. That's at Grand Casino Arena. It's a 7 o'clock puck
We're
drop.
Down to a handful of games, I believe.
Yes.
This is actually political, and I had meant to get to it earlier because I'm getting, we're back to, as I said, what I classify as purity tests, which I'm bored with. They don't do much for me because I think they are often based on very performative strategy. So the Wolves made the decision to postpone their Saturday game. They moved it to Sunday, which I had no problem with. It's in Minneapolis. It's downtown. What are the ramifications there from a security standpoint or in terms of manpower, or just you decide that given that what we just learned, we're not going to play. I have absolutely no problem with that and that decision. Similarly, I actually don't have that much problem with the fact that the Minnesota Wild played later that night, because they did play Saturday night, right, in St. Paul. And because somebody texted earlier, well, why did the Gopher men's game go forward? I think that was an 11 o'clock or 11:10 start yesterday morning Saturday morning against Nebraska. I can't speak for the U. My assumption is that it was people were still there are a lot of people who weren't even aware of what had taken place, might have already been on their way to the arena, and they just decided to go ahead and play the game. In general, I have an opinion that's not very popular with people, and that is that I think the amount of time we obsess, because I can make the argument that the Wolves shouldn't have played last night or yesterday late afternoon either. What's the distinction? I don't know that it's as dramatic as you'd like to think, but more generally, this goes all the way back to the Iraq War. I remember hearing, from veterans who were sick, because people were like, how can we play games at a time like this? We need to stop everything, et cetera, et cetera. And the comeback I got from veterans was, if you think with what we're dealing with, that we give a rat's rear end, whether you play games or not, you're missing the plot. You're missing the thread. That it really doesn't matter as much as we like to think, because it makes us feel better to think that it does matter. I think we've tended to, in fact, if you go back to, I think it was World War II, FDR was big on keep playing games because people at some point need some escape. Now, same day, I get it. Like I said, I respect the Wolves' decision. I have no problem with the decision at all. But I think this falls under the classification of when we worry about these things, we're not really keeping our eye on the ball, which has to do with conduct, behavior, the tragedy. And I think we get way too hung up on it, and I think it's easier to be hung up on it because it'll make you feel better about yourself if you say, well, this is what they should have done or this is what they didn't do. And it's kind of an ongoing, I think, largely useless exercise. But go ahead.
I think that's where the national anthem playing before games, where it came from, was wartime.
That's also true.
Doing that. Also, Kirill Kaprizov named the NHL's first star of the week. So all the talk of he's not playing well enough, he certainly turned things around. The Wolves, on the other hand, they have not. They did not play well at all on the layoff. It was a game where they just didn't look interested almost from the jump. They lose 111-85. They get the second half of the back-to-back at 8:30 tonight. You'll hear it pregame 8:15 right here on the Fan.
They have dropped, as you say, 5 in a row. And, we had Johnny on earlier. He does believe that there was kind of a pall over the whole place, which may well be true. Might that have had something to do with it? I don't know. It's possible. People are human. The team has been trending in the wrong direction. And the one thing I think for a while, and I think the one thing that is crystallized for me, it was actually crystallized even before this losing streak, even when things are going better, I felt it was fool's gold to think that everything's fine now. I just believe you're running on borrowed time, having as thin a bench, especially from a scoring standpoint, as you have. And we saw it play out yesterday. Naz Reid I don't even know if he scored. But when Naz Reid doesn't score off the bench, the Wolves are doomed. They have no chance because they've got nobody else doing it on a regular basis. So I will be absolutely gobsmacked if the Wolves do not make a fairly sizable move to, at the very least, shore up their bench. If you go out and end up with a guy like Kobe White of the Bulls, that's a little bigger move, I think, than just, a kind of a pedestrian basic one. Maybe he would be too expensive, but I will be stunned if they don't. They absolutely have to. Now, the defense is internal. They've got to work on that internally. But the scoring, I think, is just a function of the fact that they just don't have enough scorers right now off the bench. So I will be very surprised if they don't get something done between now and the beginning of February.
Naz Reid, 25 minutes, 0 points. I get we like waving the Naz Reid flags, but the only flag they're waving is the white flag at this point in time. I got 2 Sanders stories. One Shador, one
Colonel
Dion.
Oh, I thought one was Colonel Sanders. Have you seen the relatively new KFC commercials? Colonel Sanders, the guy who now plays the Colonel. He's a lot. What's the best way I can put this? His BMI is a lot better than the original Colonel Sanders. I mean, like the real one, I think. Which maybe is a sign of the times. I don't know, but I just noticed that it's like because again, I'm not sure you can maintain that kind of BMI if you eat like a KFC bowl once a week. Have you ever had a KFC bowl?
I have not. No.
It is decadent. It's one of the richest things I've ever eaten. I don't eat it much because I just don't. I don't know if I could. But they put everything in it. Basically, they put like bits of chicken, fried chicken, mashed potatoes, gravy. Do they put corn in it? It's like a stew. Cheese, everything's on there, and I think the average bowl is like 12,000 calories. If I'm not mistaken. Anyway, go ahead.
So we'll start with Shador. He gets named today because Drake May is going to the Super Bowl, to the Pro Bowl roster for the AFC. And I get the Pro Bowl doesn't matter at all.
No, that's true.
But he went 3-4 in games that he started. And
they must really be out of quarterbacks. Is that how? I mean, a lot of them drop out. That could be the only. That makes no sense. You're right.
It's just I'm just trying to rack Josh Allen.
So this is for the flag football game.
It must be
because that's they don't really play. Pro Bowl doesn't exist anymore, does it? Or does it?
Well, it's the Pro Bowl games.
Yeah.
So now you play dodgeball.
I gotcha. Yeah.
But still, just the title of being a Pro Bowler,
right?
Like, my guy is like second in the league in QBR and isn't a Pro Bowler, and Shedeur went 3-4 and is.
Yeah, that doesn't make a lot of sense.
I get it doesn't really mean anything.
Yes, but it still seems pear-shaped. What's the other Sanders story?
Yeah, the other one is Dion.
What'd he do?
There's a list of team policy fines if you are a Colorado Buffalo.
Okay.
That I just think are fascinating. If you're late to practice.
How did they come to be aired? Do you know?
I don't know.
Okay.
But I have it. If you're late to practice, it's $500. No-show practice, $2,500.
Jeez.
Late to a meeting or film, $400. No-show, $2,000. Late to conditioning, $1,000. No-show, $1,500.
Wow.
Late to treatment, $1,000. No-show to treatment, $1,500. Violation of team rules, $1,000 to $2,500.
Good Lord.
And then public or social misconduct, $2,000 to $5,000.
So you can do this in college now because they're paid. Right? In the old days, they couldn't have these kinds of fines because presumably, except at programs that paid their players, there would be, they don't have that kind of money.
Yeah.
Those are rather, I had not heard those. Those are rather expensive.
Steep.
Those are very steep, yeah.
I mean,
about that.
I get they're not volunteering, but they probably have the money for it.
Very true.
And then lastly, we have our Super Bowl. We have our big game. Seahawks favored by 4.5 points over Drake May and the New England Patriots. I think it'll be an exciting game. Coming out of the AFC Championship game where it was just a defensive struggle.
Yes, it was.
It kind of stunk.
Yeah, it did. Because I don't know that it was all great defense. Some of it was bad quarterbacking. Some of it was weather. Here's what's weird to me. I'm not that excited about it because I've said this before, and I know Vikings fans think I just say it to annoy them. But if I'm an NFC team, I'm absolutely devastated with myself that I didn't get to the Super Bowl or make a run because to me, it's incredibly New England. Maybe I'm underestimating New England because defensively they're obviously good. They're well coached, etc. And everybody loves Drake May. He's had a great season, but he has not had a great playoff at all, quite frankly. And I look at it as like, my God, this was the year. If your team had gotten to the Super Bowl 4 times and never won it previously, this was the year.
Yeah.
And we didn't even come close. You got a new coordinator, by the way, didn't you?
I do.
New defensive coordinator.
Jonathan
So the old
Gannon.
Phoenix guy?
Yeah.
Arizona guy?
So I don't.
Are you excited or bored?
I'm kind of bored. I watched one of his team meetings from Arizona.
Yeah.
And it was less than inspiring.
And Mike McCarthy to Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
Correct? That happened over the
Which
weekend.
saves the purple.
That's it. So now he's out of options as a head coach, right?
Sounds like
it sounds like B-Flow is indeed back, much to the chagrin, apparently, of Mike Pettin, who you were here for that Friday, right? We talked about the fact that Pettin apparently and B-Flow do not get along.
Well,
which is kind of interesting.
I'll take B-Flow's defense over Pettin's because he was a DC for Green Bay and it did not go well.
That's true. That's a very good point. Bonus bucks?
Yes. The fan wants to give you a shot to win those bonus bucks. The National Cash Contest. Head to KFAN.com. The keyword is check. Keyword check. KFAN.com. Keyword check.
All right, we'll come back with that Alan Page story and get to a couple of other items, including some interesting texts that are indeed coming in. And then we'll play part 2 of our conversation from yesterday's program with Andy Luger. Stay tuned.
We all had one teacher who believed in us. Well, you can show your gratitude with Thank a Teacher, powered by Donors Choose. Nominate a public school teacher to win $5,000 for their classroom. This week's winner, Tyler Halverson, teaches at Independence Elementary School. Nominate a teacher to thank today, iHeartRadio.com/teachers. iHeartRadio.com/teachers.
We have yet another example of, I guess, the I say dangerous, but shall we say challenging nature of social media and sort of seeing what we want to see or believing what we want to see or feel like we should see. And a recent example of this involves an occasional contributor to this program, the Minnesota Vikings Hall of Famer and former Minnesota Supreme Court Justice, Alan Page. And as a former newspaper colleague of mine, I say colleague, not that we ever worked together, but I worked around him early and often, Dan Pompey, Chicago-based, outstanding, I think he's a Hall of Famer, actually, writer and reporter. He got a hold of this, and it surprised me as much as maybe it surprised a lot of people. Pompey writes that on Friday, this is via The Athletic, on Friday, Page left his Minneapolis home for a morning walk on the banks of a nearby lake. The weather app on his phone said it was 17 below, but it had warmed up from 22 below, so he was good with that. That sounds like the Alan Page we know. During his walk, a photograph was taken of Page bundled up with frost on his cowl, hat, and eyes, which were the only visible parts of him. He later posted the photo on his private social media pages. Quote, "Life in the city, not too bad out there today," he wrote. On Saturday, Page received several messages from friends asking about his attendance at a protest against U.S. Immigration and Customs enforcement. Another account had posted the photograph of Page, quote, "This is Alan Page protesting in Minneapolis today," it read. In fact, another writer I know well from way back named Mark Purdy spent a lot of his career in California. I saw he had retweeted it. But the kicker is that Page says he was not present for the protest, and he was not happy about the post. This is what he told Dan Pompey. Why would somebody make that up? I don't know what it is in the human condition that makes us want to say things that are demonstrably false. It is a good question. It's the question of the day. It might be the question of the ages. But according to Pompey, Justice Page did see a connection between the post and the protests. Quote, "When people are dishonest, whether intentionally or accidentally, it starts to erode trust. Sadly, connecting back to what's been going on here, the dishonesty erodes the trust of people in our government. In my view, the truth is inextricably connected to trust, and if you don't have the truth, you can't have trust. And if you don't have trust, you have nothing. It's what binds us together as a society. When we lie about what we're saying and doing, we can't trust anything, and that's a serious problem. My sense is people feel they cannot trust the government," end quote. Though Page did not protest, he understands why many did. Quote, "People are in the streets because they're frustrated, in my opinion, and they are frustrated because of this gratuitous violence that isn't necessary to accomplish whatever the stated goal may be. If the issue is immigration, you don't need the gratuitous violence. People are upset about it and are sending a message that they think it's unacceptable." Many consider Page the best defensive tackle in history. I've said he's the best defensive player I ever saw. And I grew up watching Dick Butkus, by the way. Former Vikings coach Bud Grant called him the greatest defensive tackle he ever saw. Page and Lawrence Taylor are the only two defensive players in NFL history who have been named MVP. Page said he never thought he'd see what he's seeing in his adopted hometown. People can have their opinions about the facts, but they don't get to have their own facts. For some reason, a lot of folks seem to think they do get to have their own facts. In situations like this, I tend to want to figure out how to shed more light than heat, but I'm finding it difficult to see any light at the end of this tunnel. One of the things I've always respected, whether you agree with him on this, any of this, or all of it, or not, one of the things I've always respected about him is I don't think, he has obviously strong opinions, but I don't think, I think part of the reason he's bristling about the notion that he attended the protest wasn't that he would have been embarrassed to go, but that he didn't go. And I don't think Alan Page ever wants to be somebody's vessel where whatever they want out of him, he's supposed to provide. He is his own man. And, you know, was it a stretch to think that he might have attended said protest? No, obviously not. Is it because those who believe ICE has been over the line, like I do, are hoping for it? Because it gives us sustenance? Maybe. But his point is right. We have to. Now, the people who thought he went didn't know any different. In other words, I don't think there was any insidious attempt here. You see it. It seems logical. I've seen many photos of Alan in that very similar gear. So it wasn't really much of a didn't seem like much of a stretch, but the facts should matter. It should matter to people. And I reached out to him today. He, for now, says he's not interested in speaking any longer. And I think, at least at this point, and I think, again, it's because I don't think when he's in demand for something like this that he wants to be put in a position where he's giving people what they want. And hopefully at some point we'll have a chance to chat with him. We have, before, over the years. And hopefully there'll be another opportunity to do exactly that. We'll see. We'll have to wait and see. In any case, I thought the whole story was kind of interesting and instructive of the time. Something gets put up, and even if we have evidence over time after time that that's a hoax or that's been made up or somebody wants to believe that, so they go with that, we're still, I think, capable of getting flummoxed on stuff like this or fooled on things like this. And in this case, it was a Supreme Court justice who's saying, I didn't go. I understand a lot of what's going on, but I didn't go. Don't put me someplace that I'm not. Why, as he said, why would you do it? Well, I think we kind of know the answer to why. Because people want to believe that he would be there. And I would say Alan Page has the right to go about this any way he wants to. Whether it's to speak up or to speak more behind the scenes, to show up or to not show up. But unfortunately, we live in kind of the, as I said, the litmus test age is sort of what we live in. These purity tests are often, as I said yesterday and late last week, that's the fashionable thing to do. And it's great if you're the monitor who gets to decide which purity test and how far you have to go to reach the proper level of purity. But it's a silly exercise for the rest of us who don't feel like we're obligated to do any of those things just because someone has anointed himself or herself the person who says, you must do this in this situation, you must go this far as opposed to that far, instead of us just having conversation, opinions, dialogue, etc. Bottom of the hour break, we'll get to part 2 of our discussion yesterday with U.S. Attorney Andy Luger. That is right around the corner.
KFAN welcomes some great shows to Mystic Lake Amphitheater. Leonard Skinner and Foreigner will be there August 16th. Motley Crue August 21st. Get complete details on all of our upcoming shows on the concert page, KFAN.com, keyword calendar.
It looks more and more as if we will have an in-studio visit tomorrow with a very busy man these days, Chris Maddle, who just made news earlier today by announcing that he is going to withdraw his candidacy for governor in the great state of Minnesota, and we'll have a chance to chat with him in depth. I'd had some hopes of getting him today, but he's got, not surprised. I predicted this earlier in the day that he was going to become huge nationally overnight. And in fact, I think he's going to be on CNN tonight, and he's got a hit with Chris Cuomo, who I believe is on the network. I've done some quick conversations with today I did it earlier about 1 o'clock. News Nation, the cable news outlet that, at least in theory, is attempting to sort of offer up some kind of a bridge between what MSNBC, I think it's now called MS, now it's called something else, MNS, I don't even remember what it's called, and Fox. So that's limited his time. So this way we'll get extended time with him, and we'll talk about lots of different things. Yesterday, we chatted with Andy Luger, once again, the U.S. Attorney, to get his immediate reaction to a cataclysmic Saturday. And we played part 1 earlier. We're going to give the 5 o'clock listeners, the folks just headed home, a chance, if you missed it yesterday, to get to a decent chunk also of what he had to say with us. We covered yesterday a lot of ground, went extensively, not just on what happened on Saturday, but the larger issues surrounding it as well. Let's continue with the former U.S. Attorney. 952 guy writes, they are here to arrest hard criminals. They've arrested like 10,000 of the worst in Minnesota. What is wrong with that? Insane is what he writes. That number's been thrown around a lot. Do we have any actual evidence that with this surge, ICE has arrested something like 10,000 of the worst criminals in Minnesota?
It's false. And I'm sorry to say that to the texter. And I don't say that. I really want this to be as nonpartisan as possible. This is law enforcement. The term worst of the worst, which I've never liked, but everybody uses, and I used it, refers to typically the people who are creating the worst crimes in your state, because people use it nationally. So the first thing I did as U.S. attorney was convene meetings of law enforcement and to say, I want the worst of the worst. We had a crime wave at the time, 2022, that was out of control. And it's gotten under control, but it's still too high. And I said, who's causing this crime? Who's causing this harm? And you get lists of names. And this is what sort of we don't have from ICE, that our local law enforcement leaders, if you read between the lines of the press conference that Axel Henry and Bruley had last week, it's pretty simple how you do this. And everybody does it around the country without a lot of inflammatory rhetoric. You literally sit down as law enforcement leaders. Job is to keep people safe, including the person who just texted in. And so I said, I want names. I want the people who are the shooters, the carjackers, the gangbangers. Who's doing this to our community? And you get the names. And then you work through how can we build airtight federal criminal cases, if possible, or otherwise state cases against these people. Because you're telling me as professionals who live here and work here, this is who's causing the harm. None of those people were illegal immigrants. I got lists upon lists upon lists of names. I reviewed the files along with the great prosecutors in the office, and we set out on a strategy to indict all of them. We didn't get to all of them. They were getting to more after I left. I said it was going to take 5 years. I had 3. None of those people were illegal immigrants. What they are claiming are the worst of the worst, and this is not a definition that anybody has used before, at least in my experience, is maybe 10 years ago in Ecuador, somebody had a rape conviction. And I'm not in favor of that. They're convicted of rape. Good for them. Somehow they found their way here, and they're living here illegally. They haven't raped anybody in Minnesota. It doesn't make them a good person. And I'm all for deporting them if that's the goal. But describing them as the worst of the worst is a scary way of getting people riled up. Many of them, most of them, are not committing crimes here and certainly not driving the violence that all of us want to bring down in Minnesota. I hope that makes some sense, Dan.
We're chatting with former U.S. Attorney Andy Luger. You are you're very connected, obviously, and you're experienced here, and I know the last 24 hours talked to a lot of people. And I'm curious if you can, without obviously giving away anything, if you can give us any sense of what, constructively speaking, or at least strategically speaking, might be going on behind the scenes here to try to find some kind of either short-term or, hopefully as well, long-term answer. Can you speak to that at all?
I'll speak to, you're correct. There are lots of discussions, lots of things. It's been going on for the last couple of weeks. I have some role in it, maybe more now. My view is this, going back to a couple of your texts. Rather than talking about, 10,000, 5,000, whatever, worst of the worst, it becomes meaningless unless you make it specific. and I think this is what local law enforcement would like, because it's kind of there's professional law enforcement and then there's just other stuff. Professional law enforcement really operates along the lines that I just talked about. I could sit with the police chief of St. Paul or the police chief of Brooklyn Park, and they would say to me, look, we don't have the problems Minneapolis does, but here are our problems. Here are our 20 people who just career offenders, worst of the worst in our neighborhood. Can you help us with those? And then, pair them with an ATF agent or an FBI agent. We go and we make a case. I think that model works. If you have aggressive prosecutors, aggressive law enforcement, you can take this stuff down. Why not have ICE? And I worked with ICE. I got along with ICE. The ICE leadership in Minnesota was just fine. Let's sit down with a realistic list of who you would describe as the worst of the worst. And maybe it is the guy with the rape conviction from Ecuador. I wouldn't describe that person as the worst of the worst. I would describe them as a rapist from Ecuador. But you want to get that person out of here, let's get that person out of here. Let's find a professional, calm, realistic law enforcement way to do it that doesn't involve, this roaming of the streets and pulling people out of cars. That's totally foreign to real law enforcement. Let's just pick those people. Let's find them. Let's get them and come up with a method of doing this peacefully and without violating anybody's rights. That's sort of a return to normal law enforcement with a focus on immigration. Fine. But we don't need 3,000 people. This is a show. This is a show that's imposed on the state of Minnesota by Washington for no real law enforcement reason. That's my statement as somebody who spent a good chunk of his career in law enforcement. You can agree with it or disagree with it, but that's, to me, a way out of this.
Do we not also have some evidence about the show aspect of this when I think as of yesterday, one of the, we call it requests, maybe demands, from the Trump administration had to do with wanting Minnesota voter rolls? What does that, whatever you think of that whole issue, what does that have to do with this surge, if this isn't a show?
Nothing. It has nothing to do with this surge. It should have nothing to do with this surge. Just like the premise that the fraud cases, involving mostly Somali Minnesotans has something to do with it. Because I think if you go back to the beginning, and it's hard with all these episodes, is to figure out where did this start, whose idea was it. It sort of began justified by the need to investigate fraud. And we were told we were going to get agents and people were going to come here because of our fraud problem. And I have not talked to Joe Thompson or my former colleagues about this because I don't want them to tell me anything they don't want to make public. And I haven't asked, they haven't said. But I can imagine how frustrating it has been to have people take your good work, building really important, strong cases, and then all of a sudden it becomes an immigration issue. 99% of the people we prosecuted in Feeding Our Future, maybe 100, but certainly 99, were all Minnesota residents, Minnesota citizens. They are of Somali descent, and that's an important issue you and I have talked about and needs to be addressed. But it has nothing to do with illegal immigration. And when you start conflating all these things and putting it into one pot to brew, it loses any meaning, any real meaning. And again, coming back to law enforcement, all the people that were making those cases who are dedicated public servants, not politicians, have now left and have been fired by this administration.
Let's finish with this. Let's get back to the case itself yesterday, the shooting itself. I understand because, you've trained me. Other people we've had on this show over the years with legal backgrounds have trained me to try to be deliberate, no matter how hot emotions might run, in some cases very understandably. But I will tell you, on the basis of what I have seen I can't get past one aspect of the video, and that is what appears to be in the scrum, one of the ICE agents removing the perceived threat, the gun, bringing it out away from the scrum, at which point then the shooting starts. I can't get past that. That if the whole deal is we've got to neutralize the threat, and the threat is neutralized by the removal of the gun, how can what follow possibly be justified?
I won't go through the potential justifications because I want to hear ultimately what the agents involved have to say. But there are, because I've investigated a number of these, and I've heard from the officers involved, and for those who are on the other end of the spectrum, politically or ideologically, I'm not justifying anything. I'm one of the goals of the investigator or the prosecutor, the role I played in the past was to stay objective throughout the investigation. From a prosecutor or investigator's perspective, the worst thing you can do is approach something with what we call confirmation bias. So you see what you want to see to draw a conclusion you want to draw. That doesn't apply to you. You do whatever you want, and every citizen can do that. But trained as I have been to avoid reaching conclusions until I understand the facts, I agree with you. That's troubling. There are scenarios in which you can imagine the fear remaining, and I won't go through all of those because, again, we got to hear the agents themselves. So, yes, this is a troubling shoot. It is tragic, and I say troubling because I'm trying to put my prosecutor hat on and remain objective. The first thing that has to happen is false narratives have to be debunked. When I did these investigations from the U.S. Attorney's position, false narratives emerged overnight. You know, he was doing this, he was doing that, or the officers were doing this. I can name a bunch of those false narratives. And I would call for everybody to stop. And sometimes people really believed what they saw, even if what they saw wasn't accurate. So you have to fight through all the false narratives, pro and con, by the way, pro prosecution of and con, and try to get to the bottom. And then understand under the law, was there a justified, reasonable fear for their safety? I'm talking to national experts who I rely on and who I trust, who are policing experts. And that's what people are doing in their heads right now without access to the details. So I'll have more to say on that as time goes on. But you're right to be concerned, troubled, skeptical, what have you. I think that the real problem here is that in this instance, leadership from Washington leaps to conclusions and says things that turn out to be wildly inaccurate, such as, Renee Good was ran over the Ross who shot her. We got to get rid of all that. And unfortunately, particularly with the leadership from this administration, you're just going to have that. People leap to say things derogatory about the victim, derogatory about what happened, that has no basis, in fact, and we've already seen that. So get rid of that, get down to the basics of, did they have a reasonable and justifiable fear for their safety in the moment that they were shooting? Hopefully, trained professionals will get there, and then we can debate that, Dan.
All right, I'm very, very late. I'll throw this out as the last one, and this again is from a texter.
Okay.
Does Mr. Luger believe it is reckless behavior to physically confront law enforcement while you are carrying a weapon with the backdrop of a very tense, ongoing situation?
In a general sense, I would say yes. Here, I don't know that that's what happened. Yes, you're carrying a weapon and you go, physically address law enforcement. Boy, that's a problem and you shouldn't do it. I don't know that that's what happened here. I get that there's interplay between him and law enforcement when they're trying to pull this woman away. It's complicated. but there's more to it than what the texter just said. And I'll leave it there.
Well, I'll just add, words are important, and I believe Kristi Noem has already suggested that he was brandishing the weapon. That's a very specific word, and there is no video I've seen that at any point indicates he was brandishing the weapon.
That's the stuff we gotta debunk and get out of the conversation as quickly as possible so we can get to the facts like the last texter just raised. Let's get to that stuff and get rid of the brandishing and the running people over. Let's get rid of that nonsense and get to the real facts.
Thank you for the extended time. We'll chat during the week, I'm sure. Thanks, Andy.
Thanks, Dan. Bye-bye.
U.S. Attorney Andy Luger. That's part 2 of our discussion with him yesterday. We may well have another one with him later in the week as well. I did see an interesting observation via the X machine earlier today. This is from a popular righty. And again, I pass this along as fodder for folks who are very angry with me today on the right side of the aisle. He writes, I've been doing this for 25 years, and I can probably count on one hand the number of times the editorial boards of the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, the Washington Post, and the New York Post have all agreed on an issue, and it's variations of a theme. Time for ICE to pause in Minneapolis. The unjust killing of Alex Preddy marks a turning point in Trump's second term. What Trump's next move needs to be in Minneapolis. That's the New York Post version of it. The New York Post editorial page is extremely conservative. You could say Wall Street Journal is, but also often is critical of the president if you want to dismiss it. But the Post generally is not. And as we talked about yesterday, I think now we don't know where this is headed. Holman is either here or on his way here. He's viewed as another sign that, Tom Holman I'm talking about, that a different style rather than scorched earth is at least going to be in play here. Again, we'll have to see it, how different it is, where it goes. So I guess it's too early, I think, to know, but there seems to be, I think, growing evidence, I guess is the way I would put it, is that there's evidence that above all things, whatever you think of him, the President of the United States, he is a very political animal. To that extent, I think if he feels where it counts with him, he's losing in the public square, even among his constituents, that he will look for an exit, a side ramp, somewhere off that probably will not in any way offer any real accountability, but will take this thing another direction. We'll see if, in fact, that's the way that it might go. I want to get to some of the other texts that came in much earlier. Let me see if I can find it. All of the Colonel Sanders in the commercials are famous actors and actresses. Now the new guy is some big-time actor. I didn't recognize him. Maybe he is. Somebody might be able to tell me that. Greetings from Maui. Even Churchill insisted during the Blitz to recognize the Christmas holiday. Gray area, yes, but precedent also. Talking specifically about the idea of whether we play games when there's some cataclysm, locally or nationally or internationally, how quickly it's appropriate to play games again. And I got into that whole subject that during World War II, FDR was big on we play baseball because actually the people who are serving us, they want those distractions. I'll give you an example I got via text. I was deployed for 2024. My Vikings going 14-3 gave me a reason to look forward to Sundays. I watched all NFL games as much as I could. It was one of the few things I had to look forward to each week. That's the irony of it. Was that being insensitive that decision, the way that particular veteran responded? No, not, I don't think in the least. Are there larger issues at play that for the greater good, you actually, in playing, you're not forgetting about the tragedy, but that you're actually trying to, even if it's momentary for some people, attempt to divert. Now, you could say day of, you can't divert. But I would say, again, the next day is not that easy to divert, but we do it because at some point we figure out we have to go on. And none of that has to mean that we have forgotten about the story or are dismissive of the story. And I think a lot of, as I said, sort of virtue signaling, unfortunately, tends to go on at a time like that. We have a half hour yet to go. Bradshaw and Bryant KFAN text line is open at 64686. I've got a couple of other things in the hopper to discuss in our final half hour. We'll give you some details on what we have coming up later in the week as well. Tonight, we've got Wolves basketball on the Fan, and it's a late start, as we were reminded. It's I think it's a Peacock game, so I think it's scheduled to start, is it 8:30, we decided?
Yep.
So pregame, I'm assuming 8:15?
Correct.
And it will be on the Fan. It'll be on the Timberwolves channel, but it'll also be on the Fan. When does your team play next? The Wild? Tomorrow.
That's at 7.
Here?
Yes.
Who we got?
I just had it pulled up. They have the Blackhawks.
Are they hated?
Chicago.
Are they hated? They're not hated because there's not as much of a rivalry as there used to be, correct? Back in the day?
I'm still scarred, personally, from seeing Patrick Kane dance all over our ice.
Well, that's...
Hashtag our ice.
Yeah, our ice. Yeah, that's hard to argue with that. But we'll make this the top of the hour pause. Don't go.
Call y'all Wolves fans. You can join us for a Michelob Ultra watch party January 28th. Rosemont Legion. You can hang out with Maxo, Max Fuller, 7:30 to 9:30 p.m. Play trivia, win prizes, enjoy drink specials. Full details, KFAN.com. Keyword calendar.
I attempted to give a very defensive tutorial into why we occasionally replay interviews because someone had described it as the laziest form of radio. I tried to lay out the audience is bigger during the week than it is on Sunday, even though we love our Sunday listeners, and I still love doing the program. Not to mention the patterns of listeners that many don't listen start to finish, day after day, and even within a given show. There's a constant replenishing of the listenership and changes to it. And a few people have wanted to comment on that because we replayed in two parts our interview with Andy Luger yesterday. I consider Sunday sermons and bumper-to-bumper listeners to be a bit more intelligent and discriminating than the average radio listener, but hearing some of the complaints about repeating Andy Luger's interview makes me think those who share that opinion are the same who would complain about being hung with a new rope. I don't know if I get the analogy, but I get his point that it shouldn't be anything that is worthy of all that much consideration, or it shouldn't be all that surprising. Absolutely hilarious. People were complaining about replaying the interview. I was only able to catch a few minutes of it yesterday, and I've been thinking all day about how I should listen to it online. Really appreciate the replay. It kept me tuned in. There you have it. In fact, we had one guy text. Where did it go? Discussion about... Oh, yeah, here. Again, Dan, this is from Darcy out of Maple Plain. My compliments to you on bringing up the discussion of what is the value of an opinion from an actor, athlete, or musician on Section 8 topics. Well stated and presented. I am sorry that I had to get out of the car for the Andy Luger interview. I hope that it is available to podcast later. The CO2 is building up in the garage. So there you have it. So he goes all the way back to the Chad and Barreiro days, which is much appreciated. By the way, see if I can find it. Did I save it? Yeah, here it is. Speak of the devil. How about this timing? There's a righty named Kyle Smith, who writes, he's actually a really good movie reviewer who writes for the Wall Street Journal. Here's the headline on his column. I'm going to read it tonight, and I'll get back to you. Celebrities know nothing about the real world, so why should we care about their political views? Asks Kyle Smith. The actual headline is, I don't care what George Clooney says. So it's an ongoing discussion and debate that we've had many times before over the years, but seems to remain once again because there are a lot of people giving Anthony Edwards heat for not going in their mind far enough when he was asked a question about the current turmoil. I had no problem. I thought his answer was fine. Was it as deep as some people wanted? Maybe, maybe not. I don't know. But I actually thought he handled it extremely well, so we'll see. We started the show. Let's finish where we began, which was the most recent Vikings fans' worst nightmare. From a sports standpoint, does it get... Well, I guess it could have gotten worse than Sam Darnold making the Super Bowl. It could have gotten worse. You know how it could have gotten worse? If Bo Nix had stayed healthy, had not suffered a fractured foot or whatever it was, ankle, and had led the Broncos, the homestanding Broncos, to victory over New England. Then it would be the quarterback we had and didn't keep, and the quarterback we could have drafted but didn't, instead taking J.J. McCarthy.
Or alternatively, Aaron Rodgers and the Steelers make the Super Bowl. That
would have been nightmarish as well. I mean, you could say it to a certain extent, it's even painful that New England made it because they have the kid quarterback who we did want, but we didn't offer enough apparently to move up to get him. But it's indicative of what was in 2025, that's this season just concluded, a failed experiment. Now, the beauty of it for the Vikings is the J.J. McCarthy experiment isn't over yet. He can change the story. That's the beauty of sports. It's still in his power and maybe this team's power to change the way it looks. But right now, it looks really bad because as we talked about with Johnny Athletic, Vikings fans were hoping and praying that in the NFC title game, Sam Darnold would revert to the quarterback they saw play for the Minnesota Vikings in the postseason. Because the week before, Seattle won, but Darnold wasn't credited with much, even though I thought he made a few very good passes. He wasn't asked to do all that much. That was not the narrative yesterday. 3 touchdown passes, close to 400 yards throwing. He outdueled or certainly matched the presumptive regular season MVP, Matthew Stafford, and was very much, despite injury, still dealing with that oblique injury, Sam Darnold looked every bit the part. He's one victory away from the bowl. From winning it, I mean. He's in it. The guy we said no to, and we can give 1,000 reasons why it was logical at the time, but believe me, it still has to hurt at TCO regardless. And it hurts largely because they haven't yet proven that the move they decided to go with is going to work. And if you want proof that I'm right, well, the strategy going into next season is they're going to give themselves a viable alternative, a veteran quarterback. And if that's what they feel obligated to do, that tells you they cannot be as certain as they probably felt they were a year ago that he was the guy, either because, in this case, of performance or injury, staying healthy. Now, we've learned via Kevin Seifert, who I'm hoping will join us tomorrow, that even a year ago, the Vikings might have had a doubt or two. And their intention was to bring back Daniel Jones as that buffer, as that guy they could turn to if McCarthy couldn't stay healthy or if he struggled too much. And unfortunately, Daniel McCarthy pull a fast one. No, Daniel Jones pulled a fast one on him and took the Colts job, smartly knowing that there he was going to have a better chance to succeed and be the starter. And that's the open question in terms of attracting the right guy this year. How convincing are you going to be? Because if you have a quarterback out there who's got more than one option, and the other option is you're going to be the starter here, then are you losing your own chance to get him or to attract him? It's a fair question. I mean, you could even make the argument that Darnold himself, deep down, even if the Vikings had made a significant offer, might have felt, they brought me back because they felt like they had to, but they really want to turn this over to J.J. McCarthy. So the first time I throw a pick six, the fans are going to be clamoring for him. And they might want to change to him because they want to make this work. That's the ultimate plan. And I think Seattle, with a 3-year contract offer, $100 million, whatever it is, they made it clear, you're our guy. We're bringing you in to be our starting quarterback. So it's going to be a painful couple of weeks because you're going to hear a lot of Darnold stories, resurrection. Who was it? It was, who's the guy who works with Tom Brady on Fox? Do you remember his name?
Kevin Burkhardt?
Yeah, that's it. Exactly. Thank you.
The play-by-play guy?
Play-by-play guy. There was a point in the game where he basically said, I don't know the word he used, but it was very negative towards the Vikings. It was basically the Vikings just moved on. They had no interest in him with a wave of the hand. That's how it's going to be viewed. The finer points of contract and options and what's practical aren't going to be made. It's going to be, what were the Vikings thinking? You have to find a way to make it work. Look at this guy. What was his quarterback rating yesterday? It's got to be like almost perfect. 3 touchdowns, over 300 yards, 3 touchdowns and no picks, right?
Yeah.
Had to be a really good for a single game quarterback rating.
His rating was 127.8.
That's pretty good.
It's pretty good.
Isn't it?
Yeah.
I'm guessing that's slightly better than his quarterback rating against the Rams last. Same team. Team that killed us a year ago. And you can't really say, well, Seattle's defense won the game because the Rams did also move the ball. Now, Seattle did have a big break, right? A muffed punt that might have sort of changed everything in that game.
His rating in that game, 77.6. 1 touchdown, 1 pick.
Oof. Not good at all.
A lot of people would say the difference would be maybe the protection could be a factor.
Protection probably enters into there too. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're right. That's certainly part of the story.
He was sacked 9 times.
9 times, you say. There you have it. No bonus bucks for this half hour?
No.
We'll come back, remind you what you might have missed and what we have coming up on tomorrow's very busy program as well. Don't go away.
It's the Bumper to Bumper Show Wrap.
It's brought to you by American Pressure.
Interesting. Lots of good text coming in. A few I'm not going to be able to get to today. The good news is we have, I think, thanks to the work of one Brett Blakemore, we have unblocked Larry Mondello guy.
Yes.
He found the number among the millions of blocked numbers. Congratulations there. It was good work. More challenging. I thought it might be over. I thought there was maybe no way to do it. And I didn't want that on my conscience, to be honest with you. I think it was going to be very difficult for Larry Mondello guy, moving forward. Want to thank, for the second time, Andy Luger, who joined us on Sunday. We replay that interview today. The whole show will be podcastable. And we played part 1 at 4:30 and part 2 at 5:30 this afternoon. We also want to thank John Athletic, who joined us at about 3:30 this afternoon by telephone. Wolves tonight on the Fan. It's a late start because it's a Peacock game. I think it must be game 2. So I think opening face-off is scheduled for somewhere around 8:30. Pre-game show probably 8:15, and that will be not just on your Timberwolves channel, but also on the 100,000-watt juggernaut as well. Want What was the other? Oh, tomorrow. Tomorrow is Tuesday. I'm hoping Kevin Seifert will join. We're working on that. We'll see what his schedule looks like. In addition, we do expect an in-studio visit with Chris Maddle, who had announced earlier today that he is withdrawing from competing for the Republican nomination for governor, as we talked about much earlier in the program. Don't have a time yet on him, but that will be, it looks pretty good, like we're going to be able to get him in studio. And I got a couple of other things kind of up my sleeve in that regard that we'll probably get to. I'm happy for Sam. Not all Vikings fans are jealous. Well, that might be true. I mean, I wouldn't blame them if they were, quite frankly. Alan in Afton asks, Dan, do you get the same level of complaints when you replay the Sarah Spain interview? Replaying Andy Luger is intelligent radio worth hearing again. In any case, that I kind of got a kick out of that as well. You mentioned the Wild are back in action tomorrow night, which
that's correct.
We look forward to as well. And it is Tuesday, so Luigi's schedule has been very fluid lately, so his usual day is Tuesday. We'll see if that's the case this week. Well, we'll certainly have him on relatively early in the week, and we're getting ever closer to... Now, you're a big hockey guy. Are you a big Olympic hockey guy? Will you be tethered? Do you enjoy it as much as I think you should, or not so much?
I love sports nationalism so much.
Good.
I can't get enough of it. When the Four Nations face-off happened, I was as locked in as ever. I think the U.S. winning a gold in hockey, I don't think I could compare it to a Wild Stanley Cup, but it's approaching that level.
Oh, it's big. I agree with you.
They've only done it twice, and it was 1960 and 1980.
That's true.
So it's a very big deal, and I will be locked in as humanly possible.
Paul in North Carolina, thanks for replaying the Andy interview. It has changed my perspective and opinion. I did listen on Sunday, but was making breakfast, so he was maybe distracted a little bit. So it turns out we are providing what might be a public service of some sort. Well, like I said, I think the rest of the week will probably be similar to today, where we do spend some time in the toy department and some in the A section. What will be interesting to learn is we're seeing some signs of movement with some of the changes regarding who's going to be leading the ice operation here. The question is, what will change on the ground, not just in words, but on the ground? And that's going to be why it's important to continue to follow this story this week, the rest of this week as well, for sure. So I'm as curious as anyone else to see, because it started with the president saying he had a good conversation with Governor Walz, and I believe Governor Walz said something similar after the fact as well. So the assumption is there's some swapping going on. There's some negotiating going on there. So who gives up what in this equation, I think, is what's most interesting. And is there any reason to believe there will not be what I think we believe more than guess, I guess, projection is that there are about 3,000 agents here. Is that in itself about to change? There's been a lot of talk about the desire to make available those in the prison system. Will that be a key breakthrough? What will be the ramifications of that? Good chance we'll also be joined this week by former Governor Arnie Carlson, who joined us last week or the week before, because we certainly enjoyed our conversation with him last time. I think he has some useful stuff to discuss. By the way, Andy Luger has an op-ed piece up at StarTribune.com. I don't know when he wrote it. A lot of it covered much of the content, much of the ground that we discussed with him on yesterday's show. But if you're interested in the written word from Andy, that is available to you as well. So, again, the text line was brimming over. We got to some. not so much others, but we appreciate all those who take the time to indeed reach out to us. And Brett Blakemore reminds us that there is some hope from a temperature standpoint, at least by the end of the week. Although you told me Friday's a high of 9. That's better than today, I think. What did we get up to today?
Today we got up to 14.
14, because it was when I got up this morning, I think it was like minus 18 or 17. It was cold again.
So here's what we got. Right. Tomorrow, high is 8. Then the next day, 9, 8, 9. Then Saturday, 16. Sunday, 23. The next Monday, 25. We actually might get over freezing Thursday the 5th.
You know what else I noticed? The days are getting longer again.
Think about it.
I am encouraged by that, right? So it's not dark at 4, it's 4:10.
Golf's right around the corner.
It's not that far off than the State Fair. Think about it. And then we're going to get a canopy this year is what I was told. This is the year.
It's about time.
We're going to get the canopy. Thank you for watching. Thank you indeed for listening. Fan on Demand in the Air, I'm assuming, is next.
It is.
And then coming up at probably 8:15, pregame coverage, Wolves and Golden State Warriors, the rematch with opening tip sometime around 8:30. We'll chat tomorrow beginning at 3.
Whenever you want me, I'll be there.
And that's a fact. The stories a stadium could tell.
I'll be around.
It's frustrating.